Our second speaker this morning is Nikki. Evaluate to Motivate explains the importance of speech evaluations and how to present them with various techniques offered by other club members. Today's speech is from the Successful Club series, which is a set of presentations addressing the subject of quality club meetings. Members will learn about the skills and standards they should strive to achieve for their club to be successful. Our presenters will provide you contextual information and then ask for your assistance in discussing evaluations in purpose and structure that meets our culture at Valley Toastmasters. Please welcome Nikki Morales as she presents Evaluate to Motivate.
Good morning, everyone. Everybody awake? I'm going to ask you to do a little participation here this morning, so please get your brains working. As Caitlin explained, this is Evaluate to Motivate, which is one of the Successful Club series presentations. And for our guests and some of our newer members in the room, a little bit about the Successful Club series. Basically, you get a manual and you get the presentation material. So I don't get to choose the content, I only get to choose how to present them. So they can be anything from really, really dry to really exciting, depending on who's presenting them. So I hope to hit somewhere in the middle this morning. We're going to go over why we do evaluations, the process in doing evaluations, and the structure of your actual evaluation, which here at Valley is a formal speech option. So who remembers their very first evaluator? Do you ever forget your first evaluator, the person who evaluates your icebreaker? Does anybody remember? No one? Everyone remembers it. Nobody forgets that first evaluation. What were some of the feelings that were associated the first time your evaluator got up here and said, Catherine, thank you for giving your icebreaker this morning. What were some of those feelings? Is anyone nervous?
Fear.
Fear? Because what are they going to say? I mean, you can hear a million evaluations, but you never know what someone's going to say about your speech until they start. And that kind of fear, for me, it was crippling. I am a sensitive person, and I do not like to hear what I do wrong. I think that we have several of those people in this room. I know it's pretty common. So I think that that type of fear is almost worse for me than actually speaking, doing a formal speech, or giving an evaluation, is getting that feedback. Do you think it's easier to get written feedback than it is to get verbal feedback? Does everybody in here read their written feedback that they get?
Yes.
Anybody lying? It's okay. That's okay. I won't call you out, but sometimes you fold them up and you're like, I'll read them later. And then you never go back to them because we're busy people. But those are also so important. And we do both here at Valley, written and verbal. Why do we do evaluations? Well, we want to provide immediate feedback. That's the verbal. And the written, whether you read them right away or a little bit later, that sort of provides the long-term feedback for you after you've thought about the initial feedback you received in your speech. Evaluations offer methods for improvement and hopefully are all about building and maintaining self-esteem. Can anybody think of any other reasons that we do verbal or written evaluations here? Liz?
Time. There's not enough time to tell everything verbally or orally that you really want to say. So having it in writing covers that.
Anyone else? Why do we do evaluations? Why are they important?
I think to practice the art of giving feedback in a non-offensive, non-rock-the-boat way is as important for the evaluator as it is for the speaker.
Great. Awesome. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Catherine, did you?
Well, I was going to actually just hinge on what.
What the hell's my name?
I know. Oh my God.
One of these days we should really put slips with our names.
I'm nervous. What Jennifer mentioned earlier, though, is kind of a neutral way, right? So I think folks are more receptive when the feedback they receive is neutral. You pull those kind of words away from it, the jackal words out of it, so that they can actually be open to what they're receiving and hearing.
Great. Anyone else? There
It's
you
a
go.
way for me to put my thoughts quickly down because we have that 1 minute. So it's practicing formulating my thought process on what I thought of the speech, putting it down on paper. So that is a good communication skill for me.
Yeah, active listening, because I know sometimes it's early in the morning and it's easy to space out during a 10-minute speech, so really staying laser focused. Catherine, did you have something?
Well, I appreciate the ability to analyze and look at it, use that skill, and then sometimes what you note in somebody else can be a real awakening for yourself because you think, geez, I do that too. So it helps in your own speaking skills later maybe to note in other people what might be improved.
And I think that's a really important point, is that an evaluation is not person to person, it's not a conversation between me and Leela, it's actually a conversation I'm having with an entire audience. It's a formal speech, so while I may give some specific recommendations to an individual directly looking at them, I'm also giving recommendations to the greater group. Lucinda?
That's basically what I was going to say.
Yeah? Oh, Caitlin?
I like that it is immediate feedback, so when someone talks about what you did, it's easy to remember and not like deny it. Like if somebody says you did something and you don't think you did it, you know you did it because they tell you right after your speech.
Okay. Anybody else? Nick?
Yeah, and jumping off of that, it's a lot easier to reference the feedback that you get if you're getting it minutes after you gave your speech, because you can refer back to your own speaking and make a mental note of something rather than reading it 2 weeks later and forgetting what it was that came out that way.
Great. So as you can see, we have various ways where written and verbal evaluations are extremely important to what we do here at Toastmasters and a big part of how we grow as individuals. And we've gone over this a little bit already, but I wanted to know that the Toastmaster way of evaluating is the tell and sell approach, which is when the evaluator talks, the speaker listens. And that goes kind of back to the active listening that we talked about with Mary Ann's comment. And the speaker doesn't necessarily need to reply. I mean, if the evaluator asks a direct question, sure, it's rude not to reply, but you don't need to reply for every single comment that they make. Just be an active listener. Before we discuss structure and process, does anybody recall a very pointed comment they received? Something that changed the way that you speak at Toastmasters, a really vital point. For me, it was to get out from behind the lectern, because I'm a business speaker and I always speak behind a lectern, 100% of the time with a PowerPoint, usually. So that's what I thought all public speaking was. So during my first speech, my icebreaker, when someone told me to get out from behind the lectern, I was like, what do you mean, get out from behind the lectern? This is where I belong back here. This is where I am, always. So for me, that was kind of the first breakthrough I had at Toastmasters. Does anybody else have an example of that? Someone back there?
It was the catalyst really that set me or had me join Toastmasters was slow it down.
Slow it down. I like that.
A couple speeches ago, Liz told me to do something with my hands other than keep them frozen in front of me, and it forced me to confront the reality about my own speaking. But she gave me information on how to do that as well.
David?
Oh, I think it was one of the first meetings I went to years ago, and at the end of the meeting, the counter stood up and said, Dave had 47 hours. And I said, no way. And he took his paper and went, yeah, 47.
So the point is, we all have something that sticks with us, and that is part of the learning process. So how do we put this all together? How do we make this effective? So first, as an evaluator, the first thing you want to do is talk to your speaker before the meeting. Talk about their manual objectives, their personal objectives, any concerns that they're having. You should be doing this ahead of time, every single week, if possible. It's not always possible. During the speech, You want to be an active listener. Nod your head. Show that you're interested in the person who's speaking. It helps them as well as helps you formulate your thoughts. Put yourself in that position of the speaker and take notes. You may want to develop even a structure for how you evaluate. So I always write the speaker's name at the top with the title and what speech they're working on, and then a plus delta chart. That's always how I set it up. So I know going into the speech, I have a place to write all the pieces of information I need to use in my evaluation. During your evaluation, it's important to remember that this is a formal speech. It's not just a conversation. So you want to be able to reiterate the speech title, what speech they're working on, what manual it's out of, what the objectives are, and any nuances of the actual speech. Choose your words carefully. You want to evaluate the speech, not the person. Promote their self-esteem, and pick a few main points, not every single point that you have. That's what the written is for. Honest evaluations are great. They're upbeat, they're encouraging, but you also want to offer suggestions for improvement. You don't need to whitewash the entire evaluation. Even the best speakers have places for improvement. And make sure that you have a formal conclusion. Don't just say, that was my evaluation, and walk off. Make sure that you connect the points in your conclusion to the beginning. Summarize your key points with at least one positive included. Give a personal story that connected you to the speech. And encourage the listeners, our whole audience, to apply what they heard and learned in that speech today. I hope you learned a little bit about speaking and evaluating in order to motivate in a positive way today. I know we all have personal examples which really apply to that, and I thank you for your participation. Thank you.